Hello, and welcome to something a little different for my channel. As most of you know, I love Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness. It's been a huge part of my life for only the last 3 years, but I have fallen hard and fast. One of those catalysts among many was LA by Night. If you don't know what that is, LA by Night is a Vampire the Masquerade tabletop roleplay. It's a dark tale of personal horror and inhuman conspiracy that sees 4 vampires doing their best to navigate the macabre affairs and terrifying realities of surviving in the Los Angeles night. If you've never seen it, go watch it immediately and come back here, because I guarantee you won't be able to get enough of this amazing production. Now, I could go on and on about the actors playing these roles and the storyteller who designed the story and plays various NPCs, but for now, anyway, I just want to talk about the story and the things we are all dying to know as Season 4 rapidly approaches. This video isn't scripted, so forgive me if I go off track at all. These opinions and theories are also all my own, so take what I say with a grain of salt, and forgive me if I miss any unresolved plot points. I will also do my best to divulge some backstory about each character, at least as much as we, the audience, know about them. Honestly, although I like all the characters and their stories, what I really want to talk about in this video is Jasper and Eva, who personally make the show for me. It might come as a surprise to some of you who know me IRL, but I am a romantic at heart, especially since I like to joke that I don't have any feelings. But let's save my fangirling on that topic for later. Let's start with the character who I feel has the least amount of the loose ends, Victor Temple the Ventru.
The Baron of the Valley?
Played by B. Dave Walters. Victor maintains the Masquerade by hiding in plain sight. He runs the Temple of Boom, a hip-hop record label, and Club Maharani, a nightclub in the Valley area of Los Angeles. In addition to being headquarters of Victor's business, Club Maharani serves as sort of the headquarters for the coterie. It should be noted that he had another business, or another club, before the Maharani called the Maharaja, but it was attacked during the day by the Camarilla. That was one of my favorite episodes. I believe it was the first episode of Season 3, where we got to watch the characters try to escape a burning building during the daytime. As for loose ends, Victor learned that Ebe, his former friend and maybe possibly still ally, I'm still concerned about that, has been embraced into the La Sombra clan and is now the new sheriff of Prince Vanavar's Camarilla court in Los Angeles, replacing Jasper, who never really gave a concrete answer about that, at least not to the Camarilla directly. He did have some words for Fiorenza.
My answer to whether or not I'm going to be the sheriff of the Camarilla is...
Didn't share them with the Camarilla, or maybe she did. I don't really know. He would think if she did, they would have declared a blood hunt on Jasper just the way that he worded it. Ebe certainly assisted the coterie in locating the staked and in torpor Jasper strapped to the Hollywood sign to await the dawn, but I still don't know how much to trust her motivations. She did leave one of her ruby earrings on Jasper's body, but it had blood magic on it. I'm pretty sure. I know the ring had blood magic on it that was also left on him, but I'm pretty sure the earring did too. So her motivations, although she seems to want to ally herself with Victor, when we've seen her alone talking to the prince and the seneschal, she seems to be very much against the Anarchs. I don't know, it's a big mystery. Even after the epilogue with her and Victor, I really can't get a bead on her. There's also the détente Victor made with Maximilian Strauss, but let's save that for when we talk about Nelly and Jasper. Other loose ends for Victor are a little more esoteric since we don't know nearly enough about him. There's of course Fiorenza Savona, the enigmatic Ventru who we know a bit about from Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, but her motivations and reasons for helping and or manipulating Victor are not clear and maybe never will be. But man, I live for the storyteller Jason Carl's Victor, my boy.
Victor, my boy!
I think I'm going to make it my text notification alert. Other than that, there's Victor's 2 sons, one of whom was in Canada but is now back in LA, I think. They only mention it once. The other son we'll discuss in just a second. And finally, there's Fiona, the other Ventru, the now Baron of parts of Victor's land that was carved up during the meeting of the Barons, most likely to the coterie's involvement with the sheriff in the parking garage, where Jasper decapitated the sheriff. Now, Fiona thinks Victor and his coterie betrayed her to the Second Inquisition, and that's indirectly true, and honestly, I'm waiting for her retaliation. Next, with arguably the same amount of loose ends as Victor, is Annabelle the Baby Bruja, played by Erika Ishii. Not too long ago, Annabelle was a normal, happy young woman majoring in political science at Griffith College in Los Angeles. She was active in a number of student organizations and political groups fighting for citizen rights against government and corporate corruption. She went so far as to firebomb an empty Senate building, and that led her being killed directly by a Nosferatu who happened to live there, or at the very least work for the person who owns the building. But she was saved by a Bruja named Carver who happened to be following her around, and we get the impression that he knows her girlfriend, Eleanor. In one episode in the first season, he sends her flowers when she's in the hospital, Eleanor. So I don't really know what that is. But now Annabelle is a vampire, and she's plunged suddenly into a terrifying new existence of monsters she does not know and cannot trust. Annabelle has only been a vampire for a few months by the end of season 3, and she's been through a lot. She's the leader of the growing revolution of anarchs backed by Nines Rodriguez. I'm interested to see what the repercussions of that will be like for her, because as we know, 2 of them did survive: Sycorax, the gangrel who is in torpor, and Casey the Bruja, who it seems that Aurora intentionally left alive to spread the message of what she had done. Also, there's Mark, Victor's son, who was Annabelle's boyfriend before she was embraced. Mark eventually learned the truth, and Annabelle made him her ghoul, and after he nearly died to the Scourge, who came after the coterie at Club Maharani, Annabelle seems to be encouraging Nines Rodriguez to embrace him. Annabelle is a high-generation vampire, and embracing Mark herself would likely lead to him becoming a thin blood. I really don't know how to feel about that. I don't know. I think it's all a bad idea. If there's anything that we learned, which I'll talk about later in Jasper's story, if there's anything that we've learned, bringing the people in from your former life into the world of darkness doesn't seem to ever end well. And again, there's also Eleanor, as I already mentioned, Annabelle's girlfriend, who as far as we know is now a vampire, but she wasn't turned by Annabelle, and we don't really have a whole lot of information about that. I don't know. And there's also Carver. We haven't seen him in a long time. I don't know what that dude is up to. Actor is great. I miss him. I wish he would be in the show more. I can't wait to find out what he's up to, but from what we can tell, he has a vested interest in Thin Bloods, and he is running around all over the place, all over California, looking for Thin Bloods and looking to know what they know, their blood alchemy abilities. I don't know what to do with that information, but there it is. Next, there's Nelly G the Toreador, played by Cynthia Marie. She was a fashion model, and she had it all until she vanished under mysterious circumstances, and when the fashion world presumed her dead, they didn't realize that Nelly was undead. And tonight, Nelly is a player in the hidden world of the Anarch baronies that vie for turf and power across Los Angeles, and she owns and operates the highly successful fashion empire Thorn. Nelly's story has been a roller coaster, and I've been unliving for it. Loose ends for Nelly are a bit more numerous. Nelly, with the assistance of her coterie, killed her sire Chaz. No repercussions yet, but I'm waiting for them. And can I just say, as much as I hated Chaz the character, I miss Mark Mercer so very much. What if she took his ghoul, Chelsea, as her own and codenamed her Lavender, which goes nicely with her other ghoul, the former Second Inquisition agent Greg, codenamed Daffodil. Greg has also been a busy boy, and trying to protect Nelly and her coterie like a good ghoul, has been feeding false or at the very least misleading information to the Second Inquisition. But eventually they wanted something concrete, so he gave up a vampire named Fiona, who no one in the coterie is fond of. Fiona escaped and dominated an agent to come with her, and it can only go very bad for Nelly and the others once Fiona makes her move against them for this betrayal, as I already said. There's also Petronella and Antonio. Antonio was possessing humans to dig up a box underneath the hacienda where the family used to live, and she discovered the family jewels that she always wears around her neck was the key to opening it. And inside was a key for the Labyrinth underneath her family's former land. More about that, though, when we talk about Jasper. I don't really know what this all means, but if I had to guess, Antonio was a mage. Maybe he could feel the magic down in the labyrinth. I don't know, but I want to know. There's also Nelly's relationship with Seneschal Suzanne, the right hand of the Camarilla prince Vanavar Thomas. Although she manipulated Nelly into falling in love with her when the coterie went to Elysium to meet the prince in his court, Nelly gave as good as she got, and Suzanne seems to have some fondness for her as well. But when Nelly went to negotiate the details of this truce set up by Victor and Strauss between Anarchs and Camarilla, Suzanne left a message in the mind of Greg, Nelly's ghoul, saying it was not the time to meet. There's also Nelly's relationship with Baron Abrams. She keeps that very close to the vest, and although Victor has said before to not her, but to the other members of the coterie, that he knows they have some sort of relationship that she keeps secret, she seems to be very important to Baron Abrams, and she seems to be his secretive right hand. Finally, there's Jasper, the Nosferatu, played by Alexander Ward, who is easily my favorite character. Jasper tends to keep his personal stuff personal, and the rest of the coterie knows very little about who he was as a mortal and who he is now as a kindred. But the audience knows a bit. Jasper was, as he put it, a rash and childish man who killed someone when he was still a mortal. He grew up in New York, where he studied architecture. He also had a girlfriend named Chloe before he was cornered in his apartment by an unknown Nosferatu assailant who embraced him and left him there. In his confusion, he wandered into the underground beneath Griffith Park, where he discovered not just an M.C. Escher-esque labyrinth, but another Nosferatu inside of it. Jasper, not knowing what he was and frenzying from hunger, attacked and drank from this mysterious Nosferatu. Jasper thought he had killed him, but fascinated by the architectural wonder he had found, decided to make his home in the passageways just outside the entrance to the labyrinth so he could study it. Eventually, when the coterie thought he was in danger, they came looking for him in the labyrinth and discovered, among other things, namely a werewolf, the Nosferatu Jasper thought he had killed was lying on a stone slab in torpor with blood magic latticework floating above and around him. They also discovered a mirror that would transport them from one side of the labyrinth to the other, but only one way. And when one went through the mirror, it was like a black, empty void where you couldn't see, feel, smell, everything. All the senses were stopped and everything was supernaturally cold.
You feel no floor under your feet. You don't feel the walls to the sides. It is almost as though you were floating.
When the coterie did finally find Jasper, they learned that he had captured they learned it was a specific kindred, but they learned that in general he captures kindred supposedly as jobs for the Baron of Hollywood, Isaac Abrams, and that he feeds on them. This is a little bit more insidious in actuality, but we'll discuss it in just a minute. Either way, it's clear that Jasper has, in my opinion anyway, the blood leech predator style, and that he feeds exclusively on kindred vitae. It's also clear that Jasper puts on a veneer of detachment from the concerns of his mortal life, but we see in one of the first season's epilogues that he has been following around his former girlfriend Chloe, who thought he died 5 years ago. He mistakenly reaches out to her via a napkin, and it leads to her becoming Fiona's ghoul, captured by the Second Inquisition, rescued, her bond broken to Fiona by Eva the Tremere, we'll get to her in a minute as well, and sent on the path to exposing kindred via a radio personality she calls Archangel. She is eventually stopped by Annabelle and X the Malkavian, who we'll also talk about, but clearly Jasper's attachment to Chloe set off a nasty chain of events, and who knows if it's over. So to continue on with Jasper's story, we really need to talk about Eva. We meet her in the first episode, but she is played by the Storyteller until we finally meet her character in season 2, played brilliantly by Josephine McAdam. Although there's a lot of romance in Annabelle's story with Mark and Eleanor, the relationship between Eva and Jasper is powerful and the actors really go all in. We don't know too much about Eva, but I'm going to make some educated guesses. She was embraced in the 1960s, maybe even at Woodstock, and was a definite flower child, maybe even a Haight-Ashbury resident at some point, living on free love and psychedelics. She was embraced without permission into the Tremere clan, this much we do know, and her sire Katya was punished by Maximilian Strauss for having done this. Eva was cursed by him as well to be colorless, with bone-white skin, hair, and eyes. We get the impression that Eva thought Katya had died, so she ran away, stealing some of Strauss's powerful books, and had been in hiding from him for the last 40 years. Through circumstances, she grew closer and closer to the coterie and to Jasper. Jasper and Eva grew closer, much to the overt and obvious delight of the rest of the coterie. Their first date in the Labyrinth, where they discovered that blood magic latticework above the Nosferatu in torpor. They discovered that what that was, or Eva discovered, that was ley lines, which allows a person or a kindred to see and manipulate certain locations in an area. When Eva grabbed a strand to see what would happen, she was burned and triggered a black shadow to pour out of the slab where the Nosferatu lay and fill the labyrinth. Eva and Jasper escape thanks to Eva's essence of air potion, which allows her to essentially fly, and they share a kiss in the air. It's super romantic.
I think I've been alone for long enough.
Yeah, I get that.
I get the impression from watching that scene that the actors were very caught up in the moment and had forgotten that they were flying, because when the storyteller reminds them that they are now descending back onto the ground, they both laugh, obviously out of character.
The spell slowly fades, and you drift down back to Earth.
Jasper and Eva also theorize that the shadow, the one that poured out of the slab when when she touched the strand, felt like the same pure empty void one feels when traveling through the mirror, that it is somehow connected to the La Sombra and the abyss they tap into, since at this point, Jasper and the rest of his coterie had also experienced the power of the shadow vampires. Jasper offers to let Eva stay, and she elects to. She also gives Jasper a ring with a Russian inscription, Moi begrovia lepestok, my crimson petal. Later, when the Maharani is invaded by the Scourge, this time Rodrigo and Aurora uses Annabelle's boyfriend ghoul, Mark, as bait in order to, I'm assuming, kidnap her, bring her into her shadows, and transport her somewhere else. So Jasper, in his usual fashion, throws himself at her, and although he pins her down with his corrosive vitae and begins to feed on her, she absorbs him into her shadows and disappears. When the coterie plus some friends work together to get him back, Jasper's ring has blood magic on it from Strauss as some sort of message. He knows what that ring means, and now he knows that Eva has a connection with Jasper, and unless he already knows, we don't know, but he knows that Eva is here, and at least working with the coterie. Eva starts to become unraveled, and Jasper, and I'm pretty sure everyone else, can see it. She switches from total fear of Strauss to threatening him openly.
I would speak with Strauss.
Is that wise?
Not for him.
Well, luckily we have a different inn, and perhaps maybe you don't have to speak to Strauss.
She does very handily kill Rodrigo using Zeus's fury.
I'm going to drop Unseen Passage and activate Zeus's fury.
Eva becomes visible, and the instant she becomes visible, her body becomes engulfed in what looks like crackling electricity. 3 bolts of electricity race from Eva's fingertips in quick succession, strikes Rodrigo, and he is lifted bodily off the ground,
which envelops her body in crackling lightning effects, and she unleashes 3 lightning bolts into Rodrigo when they go back to Griffith Park in order to try and retrieve the box that Antonio was looking for previously. And he dies, and it's very obvious that she can't handle it. She crumbles immediately after killing him. When they discuss it later after they retrieve the box, she admits to Nelly that she's never killed anyone before. I don't know how much of that I necessarily believe. I don't know why the inscription is my crimson petal. I don't know if she was maybe a redhead, but I don't think so, because Jasper does ask her if she used to wear a lot of red after he figured out what the ring meant, the inscription. But she didn't seem to, she just said she wore lots of colors. So I'm wondering if, I think maybe there's hints here and there that her past is when her beast rises and the storyteller acts as her beast. It makes it pretty clear that her humanity at one point was in dire straits. After retrieving the box and opening it, they discover that inside is a key to the mirror of the labyrinth. Another thing that makes me think that Antonio was a mage and knew about the labyrinth. So the coterie, minus Annabelle, who is not there, and along with 2 of the weird sisters, Hester and Kyoko, head into the labyrinth and discover that Maximilian Strauss, Aurora the Scourge, and a bunch of other Tremere Black Rabbits, Servitores were all down there investigating the labyrinth. Now, the coterie doesn't know why they know where the labyrinth was or what was there, but we as the audience got treated to an absolutely makes sense, because for whatever reason Jasper's blood potency is very high. We don't really know why. Zelios explains to the fleeing royals that he builds these labyrinths and that these ley lines are somewhat natural phenomenon, or maybe they are put there by the Kolduns, the Simichi sorcerers, which would be great because I'd love to see a Simichi in the show. It would make my day. And so because she was able to go into Memoriam and see all these things, she was able to relay these things to Maximilian Strauss, who then put 2 and 2 together and realized all the magical stuff that they feel coming from Griffith Park that's so strong and attracts so many supernatural events is probably these ley lines. So when they discover them down there, of course Maximilian Strauss can see them through their obfuscate, through their stealth abilities. He's extremely old. Eva is basically almost catatonic. She says very little throughout the whole thing, except when they decide to go through the mirror to see what it does. Aurora the Scourge goes through first. She's very pleased to be here. She feels like they know their own, she can, whatever is in this mirror, whatever this thing does, that the La Sombra tap into. So she goes through the mirror without reluctance. Strauss's right-hand man, Garrick, goes through the mirror and takes Kyoko with him of her own volition, although Eva certainly didn't want that, and when Strauss tries to go through, that's sort of when Eva snaps into action and she tries to stop him. And without Victor having used Mass Dominate on Jasper and Eva, they probably would not be with us in the 4th season. So I am actually happy Victor did that. Well, things go from bad to worse when they look through the mirror and use the key. The key changes the location of what you can see in the mirror. I'm not really sure the purpose of all of that. It's all very mysterious and we just need way more information. But for whatever reason, Kyoko goes into torpor. They end up breaking the mirror. Jasper does, because they're trying, I'm not sure why. Everything was just so heightened emotions, everybody was panicked. I don't know if they were trying to trap them in there or not, but they broke the mirror. Jasper did take a few pieces. The mirror just sort of collapses like liquid on the ground. Everybody escapes. And yeah, it's all bad stuff. And of course, at the very end of the season, how the season ends, is Hester, the oldest of the weird sisters, who her motivations I have in question, because she was able to contact Strauss through some sort of blood magic ritual where she poured water on the floor and her vitae into the water. Don't know what connection she has with Strauss. It's all bad news. I don't think it's good news. Maximilian Strauss says that they got what they came for, which I would assume is the Nosferatu, tells Eva that there is someone in the city who longs to see her and will visit her soon. Now, that's where the season ends, is on that note, essentially. And the epilogues sort of intertwine what happens next. Well, the person who longs to see Eva is, of course, Katya. Katya didn't die. Katya's alive. We don't really know what Strauss supposedly did to her, but whatever it is, Eva was totally surprised that she lived through it. And since she has been hiding from Strauss, admittedly by her for 40 years, well, I don't know what he's been doing to her for 40 years, but Eva makes it perfectly clear that she's perfectly clear front, and Eva says so multiple times as they're talking. Jasper, of course, is highly jealous and highly angry.
I'm sure the pleasure is all mine, Katya. You're very close. It's Jasper.
Jasper.
Yes.
It's a cute name.
Thanks. I really go towards cute.
I can see why you like him. Smells though. Well, I will give you the phone number that I'm keeping.
Would I be correct in assuming that you are in fact the Moibagrovi Livestock that was written inside of the ring?
Yes.
That's fair. That's okay. I mean, you told me it was from somebody else. I think it was your sire. She's awful.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he would do this, why he would cause this to happen, Strauss, except to use it against her, make Jasper do something stupid, give her doubts. There's so many motivations that Strauss could use. Katya and Eva he could do so much with that, just that information and just that dynamic alone. He is insidious. There's also, of course, something I want to talk about more, the insidiousness of Jasper's feeding. In that same epilogue where we meet Katya, he did admit to Eva what he does, and what he does is he kidnaps bad people off the streets, people who do bad things, how he puts it, turns them into vampires and keeps them in cages in his haven and feeds on them. Eva is not happy about that. She says specifically she doesn't have a problem with him feeding on other kindred, but She doesn't like that he kidnaps mortals to do it. She says she's going to help him, and he agrees to her help, and she's quite forceful about it. She does paralyze him with movement of the mind and hold him in place as she reads him the riot act or what have you.
His movement of the mind. Success in the rouse check. I'd like to hold him in place.
An invisible hand of force immobilizes you. If you wish to try to move, we can attempt that.
No, I don't.
Who's supposed to judge you? Punish you? Am I supposed to do that? I want to help you.
So when Eva performed the Valderie, which is the breaking of the blood bond, apparently it allows her it prevents her from being bonded again, as far as we know. She doesn't necessarily become bloodbound. She still gets the powers of a ghoul, but without that feeling of devotion to the vampire it came from. So X, who we'll talk about in just a second, eventually finds her, along with Annabelle, convinces her to stop what she's doing, and offers for her to feed exclusively off of his blood. As for the same time, he will tell Therese anything she wants to know about them, whether X knows that she should know it or not. I feel really bad for X. There's certain end scenes where we see Therese just torturing him and being horrible to him psychologically, and his beast has the voice of Therese, so I feel terrible for him. I hope we get to see more of him. He wasn't in season 3 hardly at all, and I just hope we get to see more of him. The last thing I want to talk about is Prince Vanavar, the Camarilla Prince. The first time we see that he's sort of unraveling is that when they have the meeting with Ebe, the newly embraced La Sombre sheriff, and Garrick, the right hand of Strauss, along with the Seneschal and the Prince. Prince Vanavar is played by Brian Deckhart, and he's absolutely, committed.
No, I mean fill him with gold.
You want to literally fill him with
gold? Fill him with gold. He loves money. He wants my money.
It's going to require a lot of gold, but
we can get it back after we fill him with gold. Stuff him full of fucking gold.
Right away.
But you can see he's becoming very unhinged, and I was at that point very, very certain, since it had been mentioned multiple times, that he and Therese were having meetings. It was not something that was unknown. It was brought in front of her by the other barons, and she claimed that she was just trying to play ball. So I was under the impression that she was using dementation on him in some way to make him so unhinged. But then the next episode was the episode where Suzanne, the Seneschal, goes in memoriam and relives the Palace of Versailles. So then I thought, okay, so it's not dementation. It is Vanavar. He knows, he lived through Versailles. He tried to warn the Prince of Paris way back then about revolution and about the rabble, exactly what Annabelle is doing, causing a revolution against his princedom. And that's what it is. He's reliving history. It's repeating, except he's in the hot seat this time. But it turned out I was right the first time, because then we see Therese having a meeting with Prince Vanavar, and she is using dementation on him. I'm not sure exactly what branch of the discipline she's using, but she is doing it to him. Yeah, that's where I'm going to end sort of my recap, my overview of the entirety of the story. Really, in my opinion, now let's talk about my opinion. In my opinion, season 3 is the best of the 3 seasons. It started off with the Maharaja burning in the daytime while the coterie slept. We got to see Jasper in torpor, taken by the La Sombra. We had a Jasper and Aurora had a dance battle that was absolutely incredible. The effects of the production got incredibly good. We get to actually see the characters go transparent when they use any obfuscate discipline like Unseen Passage or Cloak of Shadows. Of course, what I want most from the show is I want more information about Strauss and Eva and Katya and their background. It's real. I want more information about the Labyrinth. I want to know what's going to happen when Aurora finds out that Eva killed Rodrigo. I want to know these things. I want to see more of Gary Golden in the show. The Storyteller does a great job playing the Nosferatu. I also want to know more about Hester, the oldest weird sister, which I didn't think that I would, although we meet the weird sisters in the middle of season 2. They're only told by the Storyteller. Hester is played by Juliet Landau, who someone of my generation might know her as Drusilla from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. what's going on with Victor and Eve doesn't necessarily concern me as much as what's going on with the Tremere and the Camarilla and the Labyrinth and things that could, and the ley lines, things that could cause serious total damage. There's so many moving parts in this show. There's so much going on, and I'm sure I forgot about a lot of really, really important things. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it was overly long. Like I said, there's so much to talk about. There's so much going on that I did my best to keep it brief, but also coherent, and also to include all of the characters and what they're doing. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, your theories, what you're looking forward to most for season 4. I would love to hear all of that in the comments. So thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!